everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields-Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists.
We're here with TK Coleman.
What it is.
Alabama's here.
Hi, everybody.
Got the rest of the team in the studio today. And coming up today on this free public minimal episode, we're talking to a listener about suffering from Stuffitis. What a disease that is. She's inflamed by too much stuff. We also have an outstanding lightning round, listener tip, and added value segment for you. You can check out the full 2.5-hour maximal edition of episode 363, where we answer 4 times the questions, and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free because, say it with me, y'all. Advertisements suck. Alabama, where are we starting today?
Let's start with a question from Michaela in Wisconsin.
Hi, this is Michaela from Wisconsin. I currently live with my parents until I am financially able to move out on my own. While I've been living with them, I've been saving up things for a future house that I think I may want or need. Due to this, I now have about 50 clutter coffins down in their basement, and it's definitely too much. But every time I go through the stuff, I like it and I want to keep it. How do you decide what to get rid of if you like everything that you have?
Oh, our society is definitely suffering from this illness called Stuffitis. And I heard this term first from Dave Ramsey when he was in our last documentary, Less Is Now, on Netflix. And he was talking about how it creeps up. It becomes a chronic illness in a way. When you think about stuff, we all know what stuff is. It can be material possessions, but then all the stuff in our heads. We were talking about that earlier on the private podcast, how our thoughts get turned way up. So there's a lot of stuff in our head, which is often a symptom of the stuff in our lives. We can talk about the stuff in our relationship. I'm just going through some stuff in my career, right? This thing that's been going on at church or with my community center, whatever it is, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. So we know what stuff is. We're talking here about material stuff, but it can be other stuff as well. And then itis, which just means to be inflamed, right? So when you hear about like colitis, that means your colon is inflamed, right? And so we are inflamed by stuff. And so we're talking to someone like Michaela here. She said there's a lot of stuff here that I need or maybe that I want. And Ryan and I, a few years ago, we came up with this rule. We call it the no junk rule to differentiate between 3 things. It's the stuff that you need, the stuff that you want, and the stuff that you kind of like. And there's a difference here. I would actually look at those categorically as 3 substantially different things. So you can download the Minimalist Rulebook. You can read the no junk rule in there. It's free. You can find our website, theminimalists.com, right there at the top. You can just download it. You can go to our free resources page. But what I'll tell you is, with respect to the no junk rule, everything you own fits in one of 3 piles. It's either essential, it's non-essential but adds value, or it's junk. Another way to look at that is you need it, you want it because it adds value to your life, or, yeah, I kind of like that, or I think I'm supposed to like that, but maybe it's actually getting in the way. And that's the junk. And if you can differentiate between all those clutter coffins, as she calls them, in her basement. We did a whole episode called Clutter Coffins. We'll put a link to that episode in the show notes, because that's what happens. We bury our stuff very neatly in our basements and attics. We put it in these clutter coffins, and all of a sudden we have to deal with it. Or worse, we just put it off till tomorrow because I think I like some of these things. But I know I don't actually need them. If you needed them, they wouldn't be buried in your basement.
Right.
If they added value to your life, they wouldn't be buried in your basement. What we're really talking about is some hypothetical future value you may get from those things. And that is true, but you'll never get the value as long as they're tucked away, hidden from use.
That's right. Like, if you only like it when you look at it, you probably should give it away so you don't have to look at it. But no, seriously, if you only like something when you look at it, that's probably the strongest argument you can find that you don't love it. Imagine if we treated people like that. I mean, hey, Ryan, I never think about you. I never wonder how you're doing. I never feel curious about you. I'm never motivated to initiate contact with you. Oh, but whenever you happen to show up and you're right there, yeah, I like you. That's not love, man. That's not the foundation of a great friendship, right? We wouldn't really tolerate that in our personal relationship. So why tolerate it with things? I mean, that's really the definition of shopping, looking at a bunch of stuff that you feel compelled to buy when you're looking at it. But then as soon as you turn your head and look the other way, it's like, oh, I don't really need that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult, man. Like, we hang on to these things because we keep them for some non-existent hypothetical future. Or maybe it is an existent hypothetical future in Michaela's case. But, the stories that we tell ourselves, I mean, these are important, man. Like every single story that, whether it's our narrative of our life, the narrative of how we got here, where we're going, these stories are so important. So the story that we tell ourselves when we hold on to things a lot of the times is, oh yeah, one day I'm going to use that. One day I'm going to put that in a bin because one day that's going to look really, really good in this home that I'm going to get in the future. And there's nothing wrong with that story. The problem is when that story isn't serving us. And that's what I would ask anyone in a situation where they're holding on to things for some non-existent hypothetical future is, how is that story serving you? If it's making you leap for joy and it's motivating you to go out and get it and buy that house, whatever it may be, that all that stuff's going to go into one day, then great, hold on to your stuff. But if that story, if it's holding you back, if it's making you anxious, well then you might want to rewrite that story a little bit.
Oh man, one-day-itis. Maybe that's what you just tapped into as the real foundation of Stuffitis. All of the stuff we hang on to that we don't need, whether it's a toxic relationship, a job that we should have quit a long time ago, it's based on this narrative of one-day-itis. One day I'm going to get my life together. One day I'm going to truly love myself. One day I'm going to do something that really brings me joy. One day I'm going to live life like I really want to live it. But until that day comes, I'll hang on to this just-in-case relationship, this just-in-case job, this just-in-case item. And you never build a passionate, adventurous life off of just-in-case, you know?
The first day of every year, I tweet the same tweet. And it's simply this: one day or day one, you decide. And I think that's applicable to any day. Obviously, we don't need to wait till New Year's to have the resolution in our life with respect to our stuff. And I think, Michaela, if you're listening to this right now, it's day one. You don't have to wait for one day. Today is day one, the first day of letting go. Because yes, you may be suffering from Stuffitis, as I think we all are. If the average American household has 300,000 items in it, we're all inflamed with unnecessary material items, things that get in the way. And so as Ryan said a moment ago, if the things are getting in the way, that is a surefire sign that you want to let go. The reason you're calling in is because you know you want to let go of some of it. You know some of it's in the way. And so it's figuring out what is essential. None of those things are essential. We know that because they're tucked away in these clutter coffins. So what are the things that are non-essential but add value to your life? And you can identify those by identifying the third category. What is the junk? What are the things that are getting in the way? What is the clutter? Because the definition of clutter for us as the minimalists is anything that gets in the way of living a meaningful life. And so something that doesn't get in the way today, something that serves you today, may get in the way tomorrow or a year from now. And so we're constantly questioning, we're asking, does this add value to my life? And if it doesn't, man, that's a sign to let it go. One last thing, a rule that we put up on YouTube recently. So we've got the Minimalist Rule Book, 16 Rules for Living with Less, and we're constantly making up new rules as we go, as we learn new things. At one of our Sunday symposium events here in Los Angeles, I talked about, so someone came up and they're asking a question about all these things they wanted to move with, but they don't even know some of the stuff they own. And I think that's where Michaela is right now. She goes down into those clutter coffins before opening them. She looks at them and says, I don't really know what's in here. Or when she opens it up, she may even say, hey, I didn't know I owned this thing. But now that I know it, I feel compelled to hold on to it. But here's the rule. It's called the don't know rule or didn't know rule. If I didn't know that I owned it 5 minutes ago, and I know that I own it now, if I didn't know that I owned it, I can let it go.
And don't fight to keep anything that you're not fighting to use.
Ryan, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round, where we answer your text message. You can text your questions, your comments, your concerns, your emojis to 937-202-4654.
Yes, indeed. We answer those questions regularly, especially here on the podcast. Also, if you're on our text list, we'll send you a Monday morning minimal maxim every Monday. A little something pithy, something insightful, something simple to start off your week with a dose of simplicity. Alabama, looks like we got a question here from Sydney.
How do you deal with the anxiety of wanting something gone immediately, but taking the time to actually go through the box or scan all the papers is too overwhelming?
It is overwhelming. Here's what I'll say. During the lightning round, each of us, we do our best to answer questions with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes, which you can find over at theminimalists.com/podcast. That way you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like. Put 60 seconds on the clock for me, Professor Sean. So, Sydney, it's hard to find a needle in a haystack. It's even harder to find it in a needle stack. Let me expand on that real quick because I have a little bit of time on the clock. I often would go into my basement when I owned these hordes of stuff. And I knew I had a thing or thought I had the thing because I had all of these things that I thought were meaningful to me. Everything that I had was significant to me. But of course, if everything's significant, how could any of it possibly be significant? It's overwhelming, so I'm not going to deal with it. Although you still have to deal with it. You deal with it because it becomes mental clutter. It becomes spiritual clutter. It's not just physical clutter. And it becomes time clutter, right? Because now I'm going down there, I'm dealing with it every time I'm looking for a thing that I want. It's covered up by 100 things that I don't want. So you have to deal with it. Whether it's now or later, you are dealing with it.
That's so good. Yeah. It's pithy, right? I always, man, I'm so sorry.
Hey, man, whatever
I
you
always
say,
use up my first 15 seconds on
get you.
pithy versus pithy. All right. If it's not worth sorting through, it's not worth keeping. When you look at that box of stuff, does it make you feel like Christmas? Where it's like, you're filled with anticipation and you just want to open it up to see what's inside so that you can figure out a way to use it. If it feels like Christmas, keep it. Keep it around. That brings a lot of joy to your life. On the other hand, if it makes you feel like, exasperated and sad, why do that to yourself? There's nothing wrong with doing things that are painful and difficult and uncomfortable, but you should only do such things when they are pragmatically necessary or if there is some higher aim or purpose for why you do them. Yeah, put up with difficult family members sometimes. Yeah, put up with the pain of working out. There's a higher aim and purpose for doing those things. But if that box and stuff is creating pain in your life and there's no higher aim or purpose for it, get rid of everything that doesn't feel like Christmas.
Ryan, what I love about what TK is saying here is that if it feels like Christmas, wonderful. But if it feels like your credit card after Christmas, that stress, that anxiety, that why did I do this? Why did I buy this? Why did I keep it? Then, I'm going to have to let it go.
Did that count towards my time right there?
No. Wait, real quick though. But if it doesn't feel like Christmas, you better have a reason for putting up with it that feels like Christmas.
This is becoming pythier less and pythier less.
Throw a clock on.
Give me 60 seconds. All right. Here's my pithy answer. Internal clutter is a side effect of external clutter. So at its terminus, let's look at a hoarder, right? They have so much stuff. It's literally crushing them in some cases. And what is happening is there is an internal struggle going on that they have to deal with first. And that is often what we have to do. We have to deal with that internal struggle first before we handle these external things. Now, sometimes our stuff, maybe we're not struggling. Maybe it's just inconvenient. But, I could look at working out as inconvenient. Last night, I had to do my physical therapy exercises. I had to do them at 9:00 at night. I didn't want to do them. It was hard. It was difficult. I pushed through. And not only did I push through that discomfort, but I got something out of it where I'm like, I have to plan my days different. So when we push through that discomfort, that is really where we learn a lot. But if you can't push through that discomfort, maybe you want to deal with that external clutter first.
Yeah, I think one confers the other, right? You've got all of this clutter, the external clutter leads to the internal clutter. And the internal clutter then breeds what? More external clutter. We got a lot more to talk about on the private podcast. We got some other segments for you, a little home tour. But first, Malabama, what do you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, Minimalists. This is Suzanne from the Netherlands. I'm a huge board game fan, so naturally I have a lot of board games. When I started decluttering them, I would not ask myself whether I enjoy the game or whether I would like to play it. Instead, I'd ask myself whether I own a similar game that I would rather play. This helped me to get rid of games that I really like, but that I would never play. For me, this heuristic also works for shoes or clothes. I ask myself, every time that I could wear this, would I rather wear something else? If so, I can safely get rid of it.
All right, y'all, before we get to our added value segment this week, real quick for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalist. Coming up next weekend, it's open for 2 days only. I teach a writing class 2 or 3 times a year. It's called How to Write Better. And registration enrollment opens for 48 hours or the first 100 students, whatever comes first. I've been teaching this for almost a decade now, TK.
Straight up.
I've learned so much from teaching writing. In fact, it improved my own writing. I've had high school students. I've had English as a second language students. I've had medical doctors take this class. And what we've learned is a rising tide lifts all boats. So I give you the resources you need to improve your writing. If you want to write that first book, if you want to start a blog, if you're looking at writing better business emails so you can better communicate with your coworkers or clients, howtowritebetter.org. How to Write Better is the name of the class. It's 4 weeks. You can take it at your own pace, though. You can take it up to 16 weeks if you want. It's designed to be 4 weeks long, and it's a bunch of different videos. It's 60 different written pages of materials. I think 22 different videos that are dripped out to you over the course of 4 weeks. And what my guarantee to you is that if you take this course, you will indeed learn how to write better, how to radically improve your writing. Just give me 4 weeks of your time and I will show you how to write better.
Or you can take my class, howtowritegooder.org.
You got time for a question about your course?
Yeah, go for it.
They say the best way to learn something is by teaching it. I'm curious, what's one thing you have learned as a writer that has improved you as a result of teaching it?
You know, I have a bunch of writing tips that I wrote after starting the class. So there's this free book you can download over at howtowritebetter.org. It's called 15 Ways to Write Better.
Yeah.
And a few of them, this really stand out to me. One is with punctuation being pace. And so what I've learned is the way that we write, it has to do, we often write how we speak. But if we change the punctuation just a little bit, and this is one of the things I teach in the class, how to improve your punctuation, you can actually improve the reader experience. Because ultimately, writing well has to do with communicating with other people and expressing whatever you want to express in the most succinct and also the most compelling way that gets the reader. It gives them that sense of narrative urgency that moves them forward to the next sentence, to the next page, to the next book, whatever it might be. And I've learned a whole lot about my own writing. You're right. In fact, especially the first 3 years of teaching the course, I would say my writing probably improved 1,000%. Just because I was learning these little things. I was breaking down my own recipe. And as soon as you break down the recipe, you learn these little nuances. Here's one more thing that really... As I started teaching this to the students, I learned that what makes your writing compelling is that you are simultaneously more compelling and less compelling than you think.
Ooh.
And I'll leave that as a cliffhanger. But if you want to check out the course, it opens this weekend, October 28th and 29th, howtowritebetter.org. You can also head on over there and download the free ebook, 15 Ways to Write Better. For our added value segment this week, we have a friend, Ryan, Michael Gungor.
Oh, yeah.
He and his wife have a band called Gungor.
Yeah.
We love them.
They're awesome. Her voice is unbelievable.
Gorgeous.
I love her voice. I
We've
like
had-
his voice too, but
Yeah.
she's got that ethereal thing going on. I can't even explain it other than that.
Well, if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, then the song that is playing in the background, that is a song from Gungor's new album. The album is called A Love Song to Life. And this song is called A Million Eyes. And as an I, like I, me, myself, I. But the song, the whole album is like worship music for people who aren't used to worship music. It's not religious in the traditional sense, although they come out of that tradition. And I found I put the album on as almost this meditative experience. And the whole album is beautiful. It just came out. You can check it out by Gungor. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. If you're watching the YouTube public version of the podcast, then there'll be a link somewhere above my left shoulder, and you can check out the audio version on YouTube of A Million Eyes by Gungor. By the way, TK, we got a bunch more surprise questions on the private podcast this week, like what are the best ways to minimize tech clutter and the desire to upgrade? How do I let go of my old journals, sketch pads, notebooks, pens, and pencils? Why are walk-in closets a complete waste of space? Plus a million more questions for the minimalists. And if they want to hear all that in Alabama, tell them what to do.
Check out the Minimalists private podcast. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly Maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You'll also gain immediate access to all of our archives, recordings of live events, weekly home tours, and our private community of thousands of open-minded minimizers like you. In fact, here's a thoughtful testimonial from one of our lovely Patreon supporters. Ava says, "Thank you so much for your private podcast. I've been listening to the public version for years. As a single mother who is on a minimalism journey, I've been decluttering my monthly subscriptions, but I've been getting so much motivation from you over the years, and even more recently, that I finally decided I need more of less."
More of less. That's what we provide with the private podcast. Alabama, if folks want to comment on this episode, what do they do?
They can comment at youtube.com/theminimalists. And if they have a question or a listener tip for our podcast, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. Follow The Minimalists on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter @The Minimalists. And to get our podcast show notes in your inbox, sign up for our email list at theminimalists.com.
Thank you, Alabama. That is our show for today. On behalf of Ryan Nicodemus, TK Coleman, Podcast Sean, Alabama, Jordan O'More, Professor Sean, Social Jess, Danny Unknown, Post-Production Peter, Emma the Immigrant, and the rest of our team, I'm Joshua Fields Milburn. If you leave here today with just one message, let it be this: love people and use things. Because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.